You can smell him before you see him. The odor seeps through stone corridors, a rot so thick. Courtiers faint or vomit silently into perfumed sleeves. His legs are ulcered to the bone. The flesh blackens. No one dares speak of what the linen hides. When he finally dies, his corpse, so bloated it cannot be moved, is placed in a coffin that cracks open in the chapel. What leaks from it is lapped up by stray dogs beneath the altar. You do not look away. You cannot. You are a witness in Windsor, as the last breath of England's most feared monarch slips into the cold, gagging silence. You are not a tourist in time. You are a witness, and what you're about to remember may never leave you again. If what you're about to witness unsettles you, or awakens something, consider subscribing. Not for the numbers, but to keep these buried truths from being forgotten. If this story stays with you, leave a like. If it haunts you, leave silence. England, winter of 1547. You are one of many silent attendants in the palace corridors, assigned to walk behind a king whose body exudes a stench so unbearable. 3 rooms must be cleared before he passes. The man you follow, Henry Tudor. Henry VIII was once Europe's golden prince. He had the face of a god, the strength of a warrior, and the appetite of an emperor. Born on June 28, 1491, and crowned at just 17, he was tall, broad-shouldered, and red-haired, a king sculpted for glory. A Venetian ambassador wrote, "He surpasses all other Christian princes in beauty and majesty." But now, he is nothing like that. By 1547, Henry is obese, sickly, paranoid, and rotting while still alive. In the final years of his life, his legs are ulcered to the marrow. The stench forces even his most loyal physicians to mask their disgust. And his mind is no longer entirely his own. You have been summoned to bear witness not to his reign, but to his decay. The palace grows quiet when he moves, not out of respect, but fear. Even speaking of his death is considered treason. No one dares name what they all know, that the King of England is dying, and that he is dying badly. This is not a story of political triumphs or courtly romance. This is a descent into the physical and mental collapse of absolute power. And behind the final collapse of Henry VIII lies a series of dark secrets, medical, psychological, and moral, secrets of a fall from a horse that changed the course of English history. Secrets of rotting limbs treated with arsenic, mercury, and hot irons. Secrets of a coffin too weak to hold in the gases of decay. This is what they do not teach you in school. You are not standing beside a throne, but beside a pulley-lifted corpse, swaddled in sheets soaked with pus and perfumed herbs. This is the real end of Henry VIII, not with a crown on his head, but with his flesh melting inside a leaking box, while England waits to pretend it never happened. The golden body that betrayed him. You remember the sound more than anything. A thunderous crack of armor, hooves, and screaming horses. January 24th, 1536. Greenwich. The tournament was not meant to be dangerous. The king had jousted many times before, but this time, he didn't get up. Henry VIII, then 44 years old, was thrown violently from his horse. Witnesses say the steed, weighed down by over 300 pounds of royal mass, toppled over and crushed the king beneath it. He lay unconscious for more than 2 hours, his helmet dented, his legs shattered beneath him. At first, the court panicked. England had no other male heir. They thought he was dead. But he woke up, and that was the tragedy. Blank. Blank. What no one realized that day was this: Henry VIII would never walk the same again, and his body, once admired by Europe, had started to rot from the inside. His right leg had sustained deep tissue trauma. The wound, never properly treated, turned gangrenous, forming what physicians of the time described as an ulcer the size of a man's palm. It did not close. It never closed. It wept pus daily. It smelled foul, and it followed him for the rest of his life. At court, people began to whisper. You could smell the king before you saw him. A thick, sweet rotten stench of decaying flesh, wine, and sweat. Some claimed it made them vomit. Others fainted during long audiences. But no one dared say a word, not unless they wanted to be accused of treason or worse. Blank. Underscore. Blank. In public, Henry still tried to project power. He wore thick stockings to conceal the swelling, boots carefully tailored to support the ulcerated leg. But you could hear the shuffle of his movement. You could see how he leaned on aids to stand. And you, yes, you were there. You saw the cloth removed one morning as the wound was cleaned. Black skin, yellow crusts, tissue so rotten that bone peeked through. The surgeon, grim-faced, used cauterizing irons, hoping to sear the infection shut. The smell of burning human meat filled the chamber. You do not forget that scent. Still, it did not heal. The next solution? Mercury paste, arsenic powder, daily bloodletting. Every cure brought more pain. Every pain brought more rage. And with the rot in his leg, something else began to rot, his mind. Blank. Underscore. Blank. In the same month, just days after the jousting accident, Henry ordered the arrest and execution of Anne Boleyn, his second wife. The charges: adultery, incest, treason, all fabricated. You know this. Everyone at court knew it. The queen had given him a daughter, not the son he craved. Now, the king had a rotting leg and a failed lineage. And now, he had blood on his hands again. Historians believe Henry's brain may have suffered a concussion or mild hemorrhage from the fall. There are reports, first whispered, then feared, that he changed after the injury. More paranoid, more violent, more unstable. He screamed at servants, slapped physicians, ordered arrests for imagined betrayals. You remember standing silently in the hallway as the door slammed. Inside, he shouted nonsense at an empty wall. When you brought it up to another courtier, he only said, "He's not well, but don't say it where others hear." Blank. Underscore. Blank. In the years that followed, Henry grew heavier. His once muscular frame gave way to a ballooning body riddled with infection and pain. By the late 1530s, he required a custom-built chair on wheels. Servants installed pulleys in the palace to hoist him between rooms. Doors had to be widened to accommodate his girth. But that leg, was still open. A royal chef noted that the king demanded 5,000 calories per day, largely in beef, venison, and heavy pies, wine, ale, no vegetables, no movement, no healing. The sweet, deathly odor grew stronger. Soon, you and others learned to breathe through silk, thin cloths dipped in rose oil and lavender, when summoned to his presence. And even then, some couldn't bear it. One morning, a young page turned pale and collapsed. He was removed from court. You never saw him again. The king assumed he was a spy. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Doctors feared amputation, not because it might fail, but because he was the king. If he died from infection, they'd be accused of murder. So the leg remained attached, a rotting limb on a throne. And through all this, Henry continued to rule. He passed edicts, declared himself supreme head of the Church of England, seized monasteries, ordered executions, married again, and again, and again. But beneath the robes of state, beneath the seals and documents and swords, was a man falling apart 1 inch at a time. And you carried the bowl when the pus was drained. You washed your hands until they bled. You never looked him in the eyes when the smell filled the air. Because if you did, he might see your disgust. And disgust, in Tudor England, was a dangerous thing to show. The throne of pus and paranoia. You no longer think of him as a man. He is more wound than flesh, more temper than mind, a creature lifted by ropes and wrapped in perfumes. who rules not through fear of his sword, but through the fear of proximity. It is the early 1540s. The court whispers his name with a trembling reverence, not out of loyalty, but out of terror. King Henry VIII is no longer entirely sane, and the throne is soaked with his rot. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The wound on his leg no longer drains. It spills. Pus pools at the floor if the linen is not changed twice a day. The ulcers, once round and red, have deepened. They tunnel into his thigh, and every attempt to lance them causes him to scream with the rage of a beast. No physician dares speak the truth. Gangrene. The flesh is dying faster than it can be cleaned. One doctor proposes amputation. He is never seen again. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Henry now weighs nearly 400 pounds. The pulley system creaks each morning as 8 men lift his frame from bed to bath, where he howls when his limbs are submerged. You were once in that chamber. You watched as a piece of flesh slipped away from his inner thigh, floating to the surface of the water like a petal off a dying flower. You told no one, because to speak of it was to disappear. Blank. Underscore. Blank. His meals are no less extravagant. He eats as if his body is not collapsing. Meat pies, goose legs, entire plates of kidneys drowned in clotted cream. Wine spills down his chin. He wipes his lips with silk. But he is not satisfied. He is always hungry, always irritable, always searching the faces of those around him for imagined betrayal. In 1540, he marries again. Her name is Catherine Howard. She is 19 years old. He is 49, and though he calls her his rose without a thorn, those close to the court know the union is grotesque. Henry cannot consummate the marriage without great pain. His leg smells. His belly folds into itself. His breath reeks of decay. Catherine, young, flushed, and terrified, turns elsewhere. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Her lover is a courtier, a boy with no sense of danger. Their affair is brief, but it is discovered, and the king, already rotting, already mocked behind fans and veils, erupts in a rage so violent that the entire palace falls silent for a day. He orders Catherine's execution, alongside her supposed lovers. You were in the crowd. You saw her tremble. She asked for the execution block to be moved slightly, so she could die with dignity. It did not matter. The axe fell. The blood sprayed. The king was pleased. But that night, he screamed in his chambers. And in the quiet hours, a nurse swore she heard him mutter her name in tears. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The physicians are now fewer. Those who remain are cautious to the point of cowardice. They propose absurd remedies. Ground pearls to sweeten the blood. Gold leaf eaten on toast to purify the flesh. A poultice of pigeon droppings pressed to the thigh. Nothing works. The gangrene spreads. His body swells. And you, a silent servant of the court, watch as the throne itself is altered to include a chamber pot. Because the king can no longer control his bowels. Blank. Underscore. Blank. There are darker moments. One night, during a storm, Henry calls for his counsel. He accuses his own daughter, Mary, of plotting against him. He orders his servants to taste every bite of food, not just once, but twice. Some say he smells poison in every dish. Others say the real poison is already in him, rotting his mind alongside his flesh. The guards now carry him into Parliament when necessary. They prop him up like a statue. He smiles. He waves. And then he returns to his chamber, where he weeps into his own sweat, clutching his ulcerated thigh. Blank. Underscore. Blank. In 1543, he marries once more. Her name is Catherine Parr. She is not young. She is not foolish. She knows her role is not of a lover, but of a nurse. She cleans his bandages, reads him scripture, feeds him broth with silver spoons. He calls her his savior. And yet, In his worst moments, he accuses her of witchcraft, saying her kindness is a spell. She is clever, she stays silent, she survives, but even she cannot stop what is coming. Blank. Underscore. Blank. By 1546, the palace has become a place of whispers and vinegar. Courtiers press perfume-drenched cloths to their faces. The king does not leave his apartments. The tapestries are changed daily to hide the scent of open rot. And still, he rules. His final act of cruelty comes just 9 days before his death, when he orders the execution of Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, his former friend. The charge: ambition. The reality: a man too close to power. You were there. You held the candle as Surrey was dragged past. You caught his glance, one of pity, not for himself, but for the monster the king had become. Blank. Underscore. Blank. That night, as the snow began to fall, the king called out again. You stood behind the curtain. He said, Anne, Jane, I see you. His hand trembled. His mouth opened as if to speak further. But only blood, thick and black, dripped from his lips, and the room went still. The coffin that leaked. You are awake when he dies. The king, your king, a man who once burned wives and split kingdoms, is now a swollen husk, wheezing through yellow teeth in a chamber that reeks of vinegar, decay, and lavender oil so thick it makes your eyes sting. It is January 27th, 1547. No one says the word. No one dares. In England, it is treason to suggest that the monarch is dying. But he is. Blank. Underscore. Blank. In his final hours, Henry VIII lies motionless on the bed once made for a warrior. His arms, bloated, bruised, and covered in sores, barely twitch. His chest heaves irregularly. One leg has turned nearly black. Gangrene has spread beyond the ulcers. The skin along his thigh has split. And despite the layers of linen and sweet herbs, the smell is unbearable. You stand in the corner, cloth to your face. Others have fled the room. But you remain. Because someone must. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Archbishop Thomas Cranmer is summoned. When he arrives, the king is barely breathing. His eyes are open, but sightless. Cranmer leans close and asks, Your Majesty, do you die in the faith of Christ? The king cannot speak, but slowly, so slowly, you see it. His hand tightens around Cranmer's fingers. That is the answer. A final twitch. And then, nothing. He is dead. Blank. Underscore. Blank. But death does not end the horror. It magnifies it. Blank. Underscore. Blank. No one at court was prepared for what came next. Henry VIII was a man of unholy size. His body, bloated by years of gluttony and disease, had begun to decompose before he even drew his last breath. Now, with no refrigeration and no modern embalming, the clock begins to tick. His servants panic. A coffin is constructed larger than any ever made for a king of England. It is lined with lead. The body is packed with spices, wrapped in linen, and sealed shut. But the seal is not perfect. Blank. Underscore. Blank. On February 14th, the body is transported to Windsor Castle, to lie in state at St. George's Chapel. The court is silent, the mood, dread, barely veiled with incense. And then, the leak begins. Blank. Underscore. Blank. It happens overnight. You are not there, but the tale is passed in hushed tones. The coffin, resting in the chapel of Sion Abbey, begins to groan under the pressure of gases building inside. The next morning, the linens below the coffin are found to be stained black with cadaveric fluid. And worse, a trail leads away from it. Dogs, stray, starved, and drawn by the scent, have broken into the chapel. They find the fluid. They lick it from the floor. This is not rumor. It is recorded by contemporary chroniclers, who wrote with horror at the sight. The dogs lapped the king's putrid remains from the holy stone. Thus ended the body of the most mighty prince. Blank. Underscore. Blank. There is no correction, no denial from the crown. Because how do you deny what everyone can smell? Even days later, as the body is moved for the final ceremony, the stench precedes the procession by 30 paces. No amount of rose water can cover it. Women in the congregation faint. Some vomit. Many stare at the floor, hoping the scent does not settle on their clothes. Blank. Underscore. Blank. And still, the ceremony proceeds, with drums, chants, incense, and all the weight of Tudor tradition. The corpse is buried in St. George's Chapel, beneath a slab next to Jane Seymour, the only wife who gave him a son. But what lies beneath is no longer regal. It is a sack of decay, burst and blackened, partially eaten by dogs and rotted by infection. That is the final state of the man who claimed to rule by divine right. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Yet the irony deepens. His son, Edward VI, the long-desired male heir, reigns only 6 years before dying at age 15. The crown passes first to Mary, daughter of Catherine of Aragon, whom Henry divorced at the cost of Rome itself. Then to Elizabeth, daughter of Anne Boleyn, the queen he had executed. The line he sought to preserve through blood and control becomes entirely feminine. And it is Elizabeth, the daughter of a murdered mother, who reigns longer and more gloriously than he ever did. Blank. Underscore. Blank. You were still in service when she rose to power. You remember the way she passed by Henry's tomb. She did not bow. Some say she whispered, "May your soul find peace." Your body has already found its justice. Blank. Underscore. Blank. What remains of Henry VIII? A broken crown, a bloodline in ashes, a body consumed by time, dogs, and worms. But the lesson remains, a warning, that no man, no matter how rich, how powerful, how feared, escapes the rot. His portraits still hang, full of majesty and strength. But you know the truth. You saw the ulcers. You smelled the leaking casket. You stood in the chapel, hand over mouth, as the king's fluids seeped into holy stone. That smell never left you. It never will. He died a god. He decayed a warning. You still remember the way the sunlight hit the tomb. For a moment, it almost looked holy, marble and shadow meeting in quiet reverence. As if the man buried below had died a saint, not a sovereign soaked in blood, rot, and madness. But you know better, because you were there, and you remember not the king, but the smell, not the power, but the wound, not the coronation, but the coffin that leaked. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Henry VIII's body did not decay with dignity. It swelled. It burst. It fed the mouths of stray animals on consecrated ground. This was the end of the man who defied Rome, who split Christendom, who executed wives and advisors with equal ease. A monarch who once rewrote scripture to make himself divine, was reduced to a sack of gas and blood, melting beneath velvet and oak. There are some who call his death a historical footnote. But for those of us who stood near, who watched his skin blister, who held our breath as he passed, it was a revelation. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Power is a lie, whispered his corpse. Legacy is fragile, muttered the stained floor. Mortality comes for kings first with ulcers, then with silence. Blank. Underscore. Blank. And yet, his name remains etched in textbooks. His image carved in tapestries. His initials, HR, still linger on old bricks and iron gates. But none of those monuments tell you what you now carry. They do not tell you that his leg wept pus until it no longer wept. That his mind cracked before his coffin did. That in the end, he was not feared, not loved, only endured. Blank. Underscore. Blank. You walked behind his funeral procession. You saw nobles step carefully through the trail of fluid that dripped from the casket's base. You saw a bishop pause, lift his robes, and cross himself, not out of piety, but out of dread, because what died that winter morning in 1547 was not only a man. It was the illusion of divine rule. It was the myth of kings who never rot. It was the idea that the throne could protect a man from his own flesh. Blank. Blank. And now, the memory belongs to you. You remember the face bloated and twitching. You remember the cough that rattled like a broken bell. You remember the silence after the last breath. You remember because history prefers not to. It prefers portraits, titles, swords. But you are the witness of the unbearable end. And that is enough to keep the truth from vanishing forever. Blank. Blank. You are not a tourist in time. You are a witness. And now, you too remember.